people from the planet Krypton. Yes, I'm going with that title today because sue me. I am Alfie, a geek for fun, and once again joining me, forever happy to have him on. Last time we talked about movies and TV shows on the DC side, but now we're going to go into specifics. It is the one, the only, Talking JSA, Mo.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be back.
So kind of where we left off last time, we were basically like, if we had to specifically sort out the film slate as a whole, or just the TV show slate as a whole, where we would go with it, and we kind of told them do more independent things. Um, However, there is one character that was missing from a majority of that conversation, although he was important at the beginning. One character very dear and near to both of our hearts. One character who just celebrated a historic birthday last year, but sadly hasn't been given the attention or news that warrant that. Who used to be the king and is now merely a peasant among Aquaman of all people. Uh, I'm talking about the last son of Krypton. I'm talking about the champion of the oppressed. Mo, whatever happened to Superman?
Now that's an interesting one because Superman, you'd expect him to be the king of live action because he is the king of superheroes. Now, here's kind of a hot take for everyone. Well, it's very debatable on who is the best superhero. Everyone has the best superhero. Arm Fall Off Boy could be the best superhero. I don't. But who's the
What do you
greatest
mean could
superhero?
be?
Who's the one? Who's the one who defined the word superhero? Now that's Superman. And but at the same time, why is Superman in such a bad spot compared to other characters?
It can kind of be a question that I always come back to is you'll hear every time you say this, there'll always be an interview by a writer, be it a video game developer or a movie producer, and it's like they're reading from a script with how rehearsed it is. It's the exact same words. Superman is a great character, but he's difficult to write for because he's too powerful. He's unrelatable to the average guy. He's not like Batman, who's dark. He's too cheerful, and that's not realistic. All of those translated means I'm lazy.
Exactly.
Superman, contrary popular belief, not a difficult character to get right. Not a hard character to understand. He's a nice, strong guy who saves people. A 4-year-old child could explain the appeal of Superman and get it right. But for some reason, this question has boggled the minds of thousands of people throughout all of history. And they keep needing to find a way to change or mix that up or remove those powers or remove that kindness or remove that, like, cheesiness that's around him. All can be worked for specific takes, but there, I feel like the problem with it, and you can kind of feedback on me as well, but do you believe there's a unfortunate idea among the higher ups at DC that Superman is not an asset, he's a problem to be fixed?
I think it's not just a problem for the DC people. It's a problem for people in general because Superman has a bad reputation with certain people. Like you're mentioning the Superman is hard to write thing. Now, I absolutely despise that. I hate whenever they say that. And I hate even more when people say Superman is boring. And that's just an idea that people have in their heads that really I think holds back a really good or great Superman take because people are like if someone is making a Superman movie now, they'd be like, I have to change that stigma that Superman is boring. So they change Superman himself, but they don't need to. They just need to express the side of him that should appeal to people because Whenever I talk to people about Superman, like non-comic book fans, they always say, "Oh, Superman is too powerful. He's too boring. He's like a god." And I hate that comparison. Superman is like a god. Superman is nothing like a god. Superman isn't even. I don't consider Superman an alien first. Superman is just a farm boy with good manners who happens to have superpowers.
Yeah,
We,
he's
he just has
strong.
such a kind heart, and he wants to help people. That's all Superman is. He just wants to help people. That's not complicated.
He's strong, but it doesn't define him. It's not something where like he's never been beat. Like if you assume some of these like interviews and stuff from like people who writers at DC themselves, you'd assume that they've never read a comic where Superman got beat in a fight. Superman gets beat nearly on a monthly basis sometimes. Like, I
Exactly.
don't understand where the stigma is coming from. He's just like any other fictional character. You can write a way for someone to get beaten no matter who they are. Like, even the Spectre can get punched out by Batman. Like, it's not. It's comic books are weird, folks. It's not like this hard concept. But I feel like you actually made a good point, which I kind of want to like road trail back to the get back on the train of this train wreck. So I genuinely do believe, despite any of my opinions on the films or his body of work as an artist, or hell, even him as a person, I do believe that Zack Snyder does like Superman. And I do believe when he was making Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, he did it out of a place of love for the character. However, you said it perfectly, where he felt the need to change Superman to combat ideals. He did what me and you just did right there, is where he said, no, Superman's awesome, Superman's great, Superman's not boring, but too aggressively, focusing on the aspects that aren't boring, such as the martyr aspect, the Christ allegories, this whole like weight of the world on your shoulders, making him a more tormented character, arguing to people that, oh no, Superman's got no depth. But because he focused too hard on all of that, he missed the character itself. Again, whatever your opinions on those movies, I think you can at least agree with me that um, it was an attempt to combat people's expectations of Superman rather than telling just the Superman story on its own.
Yeah, exactly. I think if we, and I do agree about the Zack Snyder part. I think that Zack Snyder loves Superman, but he just feels the need to prove that Superman is cool.
Yeah,
Like, it's kind of similar to what he did with Aquaman. Aquaman is considered lame, so he made him as cool as he can possibly think of. And he just made him Jason Momoa because he thinks Jason Momoa is cool, and Jason Momoa is cool. But Superman, he wanted to show that Superman isn't just good; he's badass. I think that's the word that was going through his mind at the time. Just going, "I'm gonna make Superman badass," and it did contradict a bit of the character. I think in every single version of Superman, you can see Superman. I don't think there's any version where I watch him and think, "Oh, this is just completely wrong." No, I think if you and none of them, I think some of them get closer than others, but I think to this moment we haven't seen a perfect Superman
yeah,
because there's elements of Superman that each interpretation represents and expresses, and if you combine them all together, you will get a perfect Superman. But each version showed a different side. If you go back to the George Reeves serials and the Christopher Reeve movies, I think they both kind of fall into a very similar area of showing what Superman was at the time. He was just the superhero. He was the superhero. It didn't delve too much into him as a person. I think he was more Superman than Clark Kent. And we didn't really see much of that duality of the character. Then you jump over to the Brandon Routh version, who's supposed to be the same version as the Christopher Reeve version. And I think that's when it started to kind of shift a bit. That's when it started to kind of people think, okay, we're going to go a different direction with Superman. They made him a bit more somber, a bit more of a downer kind of show. that okay, he has a bit of an edge to him. And it was also around the same time of Smallville, which was doing basically the same thing, but delved into him more as Clark Kent and his the ideals that Jonathan and Martha passed down to him. And then we get to Man of Steel, which is cool Superman, which kind of uh, focuses too much on the cool aspect of the character rather than the important aspect of the character. Like I think you mentioned it once on Twitter where you said that you don't like the image of Superman with the glowing eyes. And I think and that really I really agree with that. I don't think that this should be like the look for Superman because that's not Superman to me. With just a powerful, super muscular guy with glowing eyes, looking cool and intimidating.
Because that's the idea that a lot of people have. Is they go so far in the direction of emphasizing why he's cool. Because Superman is cool. Superman is all of these things that you've said, Mo. Like he can be somber. There's like this. Just to give positives to each version. George Reeves being able to like switch between the different identities and kind of having this charisma when he moves and his confidence. Like Superman's a confident character. Christopher Reeves being able to switch between Clark and Superman so quickly and so easily, it makes you like wonder which one is the real identity, and like his yearning with Lois and his relationship with his father. A lot of that's really, and of course, just being Christopher Reeve, like he's so charming, he makes you think he really is Superman when you see him on the screen. So like, there's aspects there. And going into Superman Returns and Smallville, like Superman does have the weight of the world on his shoulders. Superman does have moments where he just needs to take a moment and just like breathe because there's so much when you can hear everything, when you can hear people screaming and you can't help them because there's just not enough time in the day. Like that's an important aspect of the character, but it doesn't define him. It's like all of these get an aspect right, but like you say, there's the whole isn't there. Again, Man of Steel got the look perfect. Henry Cavill's a fantastic actor. They got the relationship with Lois pretty well. The whole idea of him being an outsider and interacting with the military is good. Just a lot of stuff in Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. There's good ideas and there's good concepts there, but especially in Justice League when like he's totally trying to put on the Reeves charm a bit more, and I think it works. I'm probably one of the few people in the world who likes Superman in Justice League. But I feel like the closest, if we're going to talk about live action, to perfect Superman we've gotten so far is the CW Superman. Mr.
Yeah,
Mr. Tyler Chin, however
it's
you pronounce that man's last
Hecklin.
name, Hicklin, whatever. That guy is as close to Superman as we've gotten to me so far.
And who would have thought?
I know,
Who
right? This
would
guy
have
from
thought
freaking Teen Wolf.
that the CW super? Because I remember watching Supergirl season one, and I hated it. I'll admit I hated the show. And Superman showed up once on the show, and a kind of a CGI version of it. He showed up a couple of times, but it was really the most prominent one was he saved Kara from Reactron. It was kind of a CGI model, and then he flew off and texted her later. And then when the season ended and they said, "Okay, we're gonna do Superman season 2," I was like, "Oh God, no! Why?" Uh, but then when they cast Tyler Hoechlin, I was thinking, okay, I could see him as Superman. Maybe wouldn't have been my first choice. But then, God, when they released that teaser of him, he was just talking to Perry White, and then he sees the news on the airplane or whatever, like the space shuttle is falling, and then he goes and does the shirt rip, which we hadn't seen in 10 years since Superman Returns, and then flies off and goes like jokes with Kara and saves. I was like, oh my God, that's Superman! Like, and it was the first time I think that I saw Superman in a long time because you can. It came off the heels of Batman versus Superman when Superman said that nobody stays good in this world and that Superman was never real and all that stuff, and that really just hurt me as a Superman fan. I was like that because I see Superman in the DCEU version. But then every now and then he does something or says something was like, why? Like, why would you say that? That line, I think that's out of every bad episode of Smallville ever, which are a lot, and out of every cheesy Superman 3 and 4 moments, that line, like, nobody stays good in this world, that was the one that just struck me. So coming off the heels of that, seeing this Christopher Reeve-esque version of Superman back was just a breath of fresh air because we hadn't seen that version since the 80s.
But then even then,
Up until
I kind of want to just like sneak in this because I see him getting compared to Reeve a lot, especially by detractors who just say like he's trying to do a Reeve impression. And while at first you can kind of see that, like with the shout rep Perry White, he's very Reeve-esque. But as you start seeing more scenes with him and Kara, as you start seeing him interact with people who know his identity, so he's not putting on a Superman persona or a Clark Kent bumbling this. You see the guy in the middle. And that's what I love. Because we never see the guy in the middle. We never see person who's not trying to save, smile extra, puff his chest out a little bit more for the audience, and then the Clark Kent who has to put on a show to make sure that he doesn't get a secret. You see the guy with Lois, who when he talks with Lois and when he talks about how much he's in love with Lois, and when he's with her, he doesn't feel like he's alone, and just when he's like with Oliver and Barry and all the crossover in Crisis, and just it shows you that I think like the thing I want to get the core at is you don't have to like Superman as a character. I think that's perfectly fine. Everyone can feel free to like whatever the hell they like. You can even think Superman's a bad character. Again, everyone can have preferences and like total ideas. But I feel like there is a difference when you have people who see Superman as something that's to be fixed, to be changed, rather than people who think Superman is fine as is, but just not for them. I feel like that's exactly what the CW managed to get right. Is they managed to say, okay, he's a person. He's not just an icon, which is what very much nearly every take of Superman's really gone for. Like even the Christopher Reeve movies, they treated Superman as an icon, almost this angelic figure who's distant from humanity and can never really be with it. Even Smallville, a lot of the times he doesn't really talk like a person. Like he feels like an actor. He feels like someone who's portraying something. This is the only Clark Kent in the entire history of live action adaptations I feel like, just like the comic version, I could sit down and have a chat with, and he'd be just a cool dude who's also
yeah,
Superman.
exactly. And I think one thing, because I always thought that, okay, no, Christopher Reeve can never be topped. That he will always be the number one Superman. But then as I read more and more and more Superman and rewatched those movies, I think something that you mentioned, you can't really tell who he really is.
Yes.
Is he the Superman or is he Clark Kent? He puts on the Clark Kent mask very well, but maybe a little too well, to the point where it becomes, okay, this obviously seems like a disguise, but at the same time, is it really? And I think one of the few moments that we really see who he really is when he's with Lois, as when she finds out who he is. But every other time, I feel like when he's Superman, maybe he's exaggerating a little bit, and when he's Clark Kent, he's exaggerating a little bit. So that middle ground isn't hit very often, and I think that's also a thing where every live action Superman that we've had doesn't just hit one aspect of the character. It kind of shifts towards one or the other. Because if we see like Superman Returns, I feel like that was very Clark Kent heavy, uh, while it has some really great Superman moments. Like the airplane rescue, till this day, is my favorite action Superman scene. Uh, but at the same time, you feel like it's more focused on Clark Kent. Uh, Smallville was the entire idea was being focused on Clark Kent. The DCU, I feel like they focus on the version of him being Superman more than Clark Kent a little bit, but that version of Superman isn't entirely sure of who or what he wants to be. And in Justice League, where he was just all out Superman, that was just Superman. I did not see any Clark Kent in him at all. It was just complete Superman. And you could argue that because he didn't have that much screen time, but as you said, Tyler Hoechlin, I think, was the only one that really just nailed it. Really, just that little aspect of the character that is so hard to nail, and they got it right. And I think what gives him an advantage is that every other version of Superman that we've had interacted with one of his I guess connections. Like the Christopher Reeve Superman only interacted with the Superman characters, Lois, Perry, Jimmy, and the villains. The same thing with Superman Returns. In Smallville, they expanded on that a little bit by including some of the other superheroes like Green Arrow and Cyborg. And in the DCEU, yeah, he interacts to some degree with the Justice League members. But with the CW Superman, we saw him interact with everyone. We saw him interacting with Kara, which was the first time we'd ever see Superman and Supergirl together, even though it was supposed to be like the original plan when they did the Helen Slater Supergirl movie, which bombed, and Christopher Reeve, I think, refused to make a cameo in that or something. Uh, and that relationship between those two, I think, showed us a version of Clark that we really needed to see because we'd never seen him interact with that person before. When he interacts with the other superheroes like Oliver and Barry, okay, yeah, I see Superman. When he interacts with Lois, I see Clark. But when he interacts with Kara, I see both of them at the same time,
That's
and I
very
think
good.
that's very rare to Superman. And I think even the comics sometimes get it a little bit mixed up because Superman is not a difficult character to write, but he's a very sensitive character to write. It's like you have to get everything about him right through his words alone. You could do an incredible Superman comic, story, whatever, without throwing a single punch or flying a single inch.
Yeah, I feel like one of my favorite ones is from Garth Ennis's Hitman, where it's just Superman and Hitman sitting on a roof talking. That's the entire issue. Uh, and I feel like it's kind of like he's one of the characters who I feel like you need that side in live action more. I feel like that's what people would appreciate is there's a reason why like when you type in Superman on Twitter you normally see like the most retweeted thing is the page from All Star where he's consoling the suicidal girl. Um, I feel like that's the thing that people really connect with, and the special heart of the character is Superman's the guy who when life's getting you down he'll give you a hug. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care like what you've done. He's so wholesome and good, he still holds out like faith that maybe one day Lex Luthor could be a good person. Like Superman will always forgive you, no matter what you've done. You can still he'll still like punish you for it if like was horrible, but he'll still forgive you, and there's always like a better way, a different chance. Um, he's not even like Jesus in a way. He's just a good person. It's not like some holy mission that could be tied into that. He's just a character. I think Grant Morrison said it best, where he's like, on like one of our darkest hours, because obviously Shield and Suster made this like on the cusp of war kicking off in Europe. Uh, in like our darkest night, we made a guy who would never let us down, and that's Superman. He's the guy who'll never let us down, and that's just comforting. Even if you don't find it entertaining, it's comforting. And I feel like, especially in this modern day climate, DC's really missing out on not having a Superman movie that planned, especially when at times like James Gunn was offered one and he turned it down apparently. So I mean, it seems like people aren't even interested in making something with the character anymore, and it makes me sad. It really does make me sad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that I once read that really it made me feel weird. I didn't hate it because I love Captain America. But I remember there was this one article that said, okay, Captain America is now like the Superman of the modern age, and he's like the better version of that because he's the version that we were exposed to. And I think you can draw a lot of comparisons between Steve Rogers and Clark Kent, but why? should Captain America be the Superman of our time instead of Superman?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Captain America is a great character, and yeah, and again, the very similar wholesomeness about him and Superman. But it is just Superman, as you said, is comforting. I think in my most in my like personal lowest moments and darkest moments, I've always read Superman comics because they're the ones that just help me. I think his words are just comforting, and I imagine if he was standing, like if I'm just sitting there feeling absolutely terrible, and there is one person that I would just want to talk to, it wouldn't be any of my family members, it wouldn't be my best friends. I just want Superman standing outside the window for like 2 minutes, and everything will be fine, because that's who he is, and that's who he should be, that's who he should be, an icon of, um, not just punching people, and at the same time not just making jokes and kind of being awkward. Uh, we rarely see that really good aspect of Superman, because you can show Superman saving people. All you can make an entire movie Superman saving people from burning buildings and cats from trees or whatever. But you need that feeling of warmth that Superman exudes. Because while I hate the Jesus comparison, and the religious aspects of the character that for some reason people keep trying to connect Superman with,
Hmm.
I think if you look at like the history of religion, uh, in every major religion, there's the I guess the major prophet or messenger, and he's always the absolute best version of what we could be as human beings. And Superman is that. He is the best of us. Not the best as in because he can do so much stuff that we can do. No, because he has the biggest heart. He is the most pure out of all of us. And I guess that's the only comparison that I would draw between him and Jesus or any other prophet, is he represents the purest of all of us.
But at the same time, the reason why is also is he's not only just that, Superman also punches out giant robots. So I mean, Jesus no zero, Superman one.
Yeah, I don't think Jesus did that one.
Mo, it's always a pleasure having you on. That last little bit, I don't know how I'm gonna top that with some like cheesy end credits nonsense. So I think I'm just gonna end it here. If you've got anything else you want to say to the audience, go ahead, buddy.
I think we've pretty much covered everything except for, look, you can give me everything that I would ever want with Superman, but just give me Superman shooting mini Superman out of his hands. I don't care how they do it. Just do it. I want to see
Hashtag
Superman
Superman.
shooting a mini version out of his hand before I die.
Make it happen. Well, we will come for you. I hope you've enjoyed listening. We shall be back, hopefully making this a regular thing, with another topic. So yeah, if you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe. Go follow Talking JSA on Twitter for more of these heartfelt and meme stories. I've been Alfie, a geek for fun.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.